The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. We are back. Golenbock University. And I'm Ralph Tyko. I'm privileged to be the fourth baseball Michigana in the booth today because we have Ronnie Rabinovitz.
Hi, Ralph.
Naturally, Al Blumkin is here.
Hi, everybody.
And the professor is here, Peter Golenbock.
Happy Sunday.
Hello, Peter.
How are you?
Good. We were expecting Jim Campanis Jr. to join us. I got a message. I sent him the numbers. He has no cell phone signal. He is having trouble dialing in. We'll see if he can join us. Whether he can or not, I think the topic should be the Hall of Fame, the recent Hall of Fame ballot. I want the response of all three of you gentlemen to see what you think about the results, who's in that shouldn't be in, who's not in. Gil Hodges, for instance.
You start with him.
Right.
Start with him and go right to Marvin Miller.
Right.
And
then you can go to Joe Jackson and Pete Rose.
Minnie Minoso.
Right.
Then you can go
Tony
to
Oliva.
Barry Bonds,
Tony
and Roger
Oliva?
Clemens.
No.
Right. Well,
Sorry about
now
that
we
one.
have a debate, and this is the ongoing baseball debate in America. No one turned me around but Peter Golenbock on the Bonds-Clemens debate. I am on your side at this point. I have to assume that every pitcher that faced Barry Bonds was on PEDs or suspect.
Of course.
And just as every batter that faced Clemens was suspect. So I say let the game police itself, and you compare era to era, and that's all you can do.
Yeah.
Peter Golenbock.
I agree. That's exactly right. Roger Clemens only won 7 Cy Young Awards. Did he win 7 Cy Young Awards because he used, steroids? No, he won 7 Cy Young Awards because he was the best damn pitcher of the last 50 years. And Barry Bonds, how many home runs did he hit? I mean, I can't even count them. And how many times did they walk him with the bases loaded? I mean, you talk about the greatest players who ever played the game, and if you don't put Barry Bonds in the top 3, my guess is you're just probably being racist. Because he was something else. He was just unbelievable. I mean,
he was in a groove for a 5-year period that was as dominating as Koufax's groove in his 5-year period.
When I teach my sports class, the baseball class, and we get towards the end of the class because Bonds is one of the great stars of the he's the last
of the era.
The last truly great star. I play about a 10-minute segment of Barry hitting home runs, and you just sit there agape. It's just astounding. He had this little short swing, and he put balls into the water in that park in San Francisco. And the other thing about it is that during the entire time he and Clemens and Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire and who's one other player played for Baltimore and he hit a lot of home runs.
Rafael Palmeiro,
who also should be in the Hall of Fame. The fans flocked. I mean flocked. The baseball went on strike in 1994 and they lost about 10% of their fans. And when Sosa and McGwire and Bonds and those guys started hitting, all those fans came back. And all of those owners reaped the benefit. All those owners reaped the benefit of those fans coming back.
And they looked the other way.
No manager said boo. It was an open secret what they were doing. No owner ever said boo. Quite frankly, it was the government that got involved that sort of put the kibosh on the whole thing.
Right.
That committee. And what the federal government was doing in baseball's business is something else I can't quite figure out. You know, the Republicans are always talking about keeping the government out of your business. Except, of course, when they want to put the government into your business. In that case, it's an entirely different thing. And that's what happened with baseball. So, I don't know. I mean, it's just my own personal opinion. Obviously, 43% of the voters don't agree with me. Both Clemens and Bonds have reached about 55, 56% in the voting, which is better than the 25% than they got a few years ago. So there's still people, and I gather one of our members still feels the same way. It just doesn't seem fair. I mean, these guys did so much for the game of baseball.
Yes, they
deserve to be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, you mentioned Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson. Would you talk about that?
Oh, sure, I'd be happy to. Shoeless Joe Jackson, they threw $5,000 on his bed. He tried to give the money back, but the owner of the team, Comiskey, would not see him. He took the money. He ended up taking the money, but he never did anything. He wasn't really involved in the conspiracy in any way. He was sort of duped in that sense. So you could argue, well, he took the money, so he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. And obviously he was kicked out of baseball for taking the money. But I've done a lot of research on that too, and there are two of those 8 guys who should not have been banned, and he was one of them. And their
Buck Weaver was the other one.
Buck Weaver, the third baseman, was the other one. Weaver, these people were not terribly smart. Comiskey took his attorney and made them the attorneys for these ball players, and the ball players were not smart enough to get their own attorneys. And Buck Weaver especially should have done that. The attorney said to Shoeless Joe Jackson, admit everything that you've done and everything will be fine. So, of course, Shoeless Joe Jackson admitted that he was given $5,000 and he was thrown out of baseball. But if you look at what he did during that World Series, he really didn't do, he did nothing. He hit, 364 and drove in runs and played a great outfield, and he did fine. Pete Rose is a little bit more complicated. Pete Rose never did anything as a player to be thrown out of baseball. So I think that what they could do if they wanted to is to vote Pete Rose in as the magnificent player that he was. I mean, he had more hits than Ty Cobb, which is truly astounding. I would just marvel at the way the guy played baseball.
And his versatility. He was an all-star at 5 positions.
He was an all-star at 5 different positions.
He was also his own worst enemy.
Of course he was. He was his own worst enemy.
Yeah.
But despite all that, if you look at his numbers, he was a magician. He was just marvelous. As a manager, he got in trouble. He was a gambling addict, and he got in trouble, and he did stupid things. He did really stupid things.
And the stupidest things he did was deny it. This is America. We're a forgiving country if people do the wrong thing. And
he stonewalled the way Nixon did.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
So that's true.
Right.
But and the way Trump is going to do. Yeah.
So put him in as a player.
The thing with Pete, he wasn't, if he would apologize, he was such a, ornery so-and-so, and I think the writers burned him on that too, because he's not, he didn't apologize, he didn't say I'm sorry, he did nothing, just kind of arrogant and obstinate. And
well, I mean,
I think that's
personality. I mean, I did a really wonderful book with him, Pete Rose on hitting, how to hit better than anybody, and we had a ball. We just had a wonderful time. But Pete was like a little kid. He came in one day before we started working, and he must have had 100 tickets from the local horse track. And he opened them all up and said, "Look at this." And I went, "Whoa, holy smokes, what is this? So he proceeded to tell me that he and two buddies bet $100,000 on the pick six. You win the first 6 races and you win a ton of money. And he said to me, he said, we knew the results of 4 of the races because apparently the jockeys and the trainers had all banded together to fix those 4 races. He said, so I had to buy a horse from each of the other 2 races.
Yeah, that's called wheeling.
He wheeled.
Yeah,
so
he wheeled everything. Yeah.
So he showed me all these tickets.
Yeah.
And so the next day I come in and I go, Pete, how'd you do? He goes, we won. He was just so thrilled. They won for their $100,000. They ended up winning $140,000.
Wow.
This was a period I was making about $8,000 a year, and here's a guy betting $100,000 on a bunch of horse races. But he was a gambler. Paul Harding was a gambler. And some of these guys are just gamblers.
Hornsby.
But Hornsby was a gambler. But you can't take away from Pete Rose that during the 24 years he played, he got 200 hits every single year. And if you think about it, it's just probably the most incredible feat in the history of baseball. I mean, to get 200 hits once, 98% of the players don't do that.
Right.
200 hits is a hell of a lot of hits. A hell of a lot of hits. And
the owners play the horses too, probably more than Pete Rose plays.
The owners own the horses.
Sure.
Look.
John Galbraith.
George Steinbrenner.
If you want to talk about hypocrisy.
John Galbraith, when he owned the Pirates, won the Kentucky Derby twice.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
And George Steinbrenner had horses, and Lou Piniella owned horses while he was a Yankee. I heard the most marvelous story from Lenny Randall during
Joe Torre owns horses.
Owned horses while he was with the Yankees. During the middle of a game, Piniella strikes out on a bad call, and he comes into the dugout and he takes his bat and smashes every light going down to the clubhouse. He's royally pissed off. 5 minutes later, a guy comes over and says, meet so-and-so over down the left field line. You just won $55,000 at the track today. So Piniella, he goes from smashing all these light bulbs to being sort of the happiest man on earth, and the next time up, he got up and he hit a home run. Betting, yes, you're not supposed to bet. It's a bad thing, and Rose was betting. He was betting baseball, and he should not have been doing it. There's no question about it.
No.
But as a player...
but I'm sure he had no control. He is the poster boy for a degenerate gambler.
He is.
And
there's no two ways about it. There is one argument. People say to me, well, just because you're gambling on baseball, if you're betting on your own team, chances are there's nothing wrong with that.
Oh, you explained that to us, Peter. That was very enlightening.
Yeah.
To those of you out there, and maybe Ronnie didn't hear it, I remember Alan and I talking off the air going, wow, what we're privy to from knowing you, Peter. It's incredible. Explain
it is incredible.
Pete Rose's, the excuse is he never bet against his own team.
Right.
And really he didn't, but when he didn't bet, it was telling the bookies to bet, if he didn't bet for his team, bet against them, and B, there was a way of Pete's placing the bets and how he bet that was very enlightening to Alan and I. Would you tell Ronnie Rabinovitz and our audience
and whoever's listening? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, whoever's listening. We got people.
Sure.
We got people listening.
Got people.
I want to hear.
There's something called the over and the under. And the over and under has to do with how many runs the two teams score in the ball game. And it's one of the ways you can bet. So if the over-under is 9, for instance, if the score is 6-5, that's over. If the score is 4-3, that's under 9. And see, so the Las Vegas comes up with the number on the over-under, and you've got to decide whether to take the over or whether to take the under. And from what I understand, sometimes what Pete would do is if he had the over, for instance, he would leave his struggling relief pitcher in the game if they were losing to get clocked, to make sure that he got the over. Now that's not anything near close throwing the game, because he would only do this if they were losing. On the other hand, you're supposed to always be trying to win. So
and you want to hold the score too in hopes of coming back.
Right. So he was fighting for his over, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
a friend of mine told me that there, outside of the point spread and the over-under on the Super Bowl, there are something like 350 proposition bets.
Really?
Well,
yeah.
What's a proposition bet?
Okay, like they have in the first drive will end on A, a touchdown, B, a field goal, C, a punt, D, something else. They have over-unders on the national anthem, length of the it takes a singer to do the national anthem, betting on the odds on the coin flip, odds on quarters, who scores the first touchdown, how it's scored, everything you can, every permutation you can think of, and some you can't even think of. They have going.
Spangled Banner?
What?
They have Star Spangled Banner?
They have so much gambling on the Super Bowl. It's probably the biggest gambling event every year.
Well, when you go to a baseball game and the umpire throws out the ball to start the inning, and there must be 100 or 200 people in the stadium betting on whether the ball lands on the mound or not on the mound.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yes, really. Gambling is a pervasive thing in sports. It really is.
I guess so. Wow.
Hey, let me turn the subject now that we have Ronnie Rabinovitz on. Mr. Campanis, senior or junior, didn't make it, but that doesn't stop me from carrying on the topic. I wanted to talk to those two about their dad and grandfather, Al Campanis. And I did a little bit of research into what I consider the best book about Jackie. It is Jackie Robinson in quotes, and this was compiled, I don't know, both of you, Peter and Ron, were quoted in this book extensively. I'm looking here for the author, Danny Perry. He compiled Jackie in quotes, and he had people quoting him. He had and his own quote, Jackie's own quotes, and about him and about the situation. It's a terrific book. Now,
really is.
on this program, you are the two amongst the two most quoted people in the book. So we got to talk a little Jackie. Now, my idea was to ask Mr. Campanis, either one of them or both, exactly what happened that night that their granddad just made a faux pas, and how unlikely a person to talk like that was Al Campanis, given that he was Jackie Robinson's roommate in the minors in the first year. He was his double play partner. He played second while Jackie played short, and he was Branch Rickey's, like, one of his right-hand guys, instrumental in signing Newcomb and Joe Black and what have you. I'd like to know what happened. And
well, you have to explain to your listeners what he said. You must explain to your listeners
he said
what he
something.
said.
You told me you reminded me what show it was on. It was a late night.
It was Nightline, I think.
It was Nightline.
It was Nightline.
It was Nightline. And he was on with Roger Kahn, and they were talking about why there were no African American either managers or general managers. And despite everything that Al Campanis had gone through with Jackie Robinson, his answer basically was that African Americans aren't smart enough. He said they don't have the necessities. It's like the same reason they can't swim. It sort of went on like that. And the moderator did everything in his power to try to shut him up. And he wouldn't shut up. I mean, I watched that. I sat there because Roger Kahn at that time was a very close friend of mine. And Roger had called me to say he was going to be on TV, that I should watch the program. So I'm sitting and watching this program. And of course, I was always a huge fan of Al Campanis. I mean, he was one of the, super duper general managers in all of baseball. He was respected by everybody. And here this guy comes on to say that African Americans aren't smart enough to be managers or general managers. I was just floored. And I guess the rest of the world was too, because the next day he was fired.
He was fired, yeah. What do you think happened, Peter? Why do you think he did this?
He did it because he believed that. What do you mean, why did he do that? He believed that.
He might have had a little wine in him too. I think
No. That's like Trump and his shithole countries. Why did he do that? Well, he did it because he believes that. That's why they say these things, because that's what they believe. Unfortunately.
Huh.
Yeah.
But he certainly was the bigot. He was so open. He was wonderful to Jackie. They were teammates and very close teammates. Would he have hired Jackie to be either manager of general manager of his team? Clearly not.
No.
Huh.
And would Jackie wanted to have worked for a man who probably had a 30 less IQ than Jackie Robinson?
Well, no, that's not fair either. I mean, Jackie would have taken that job in a minute if they had offered it.
He wanted it.
No.
He wanted the job in a minute.
He wanted
the job. Yeah.
But they wanted him.
Generally don't make good managers.
I do believe that they wanted him to go to the minors, and he didn't want to do it. And not only that, but he was offered a job with chock full of nuts that paid him far more than what he was making in baseball.
Right.
So either you offer him the job or you don't, and they didn't.
Right. Yeah.
Well, that's one of the worst black eyes as a Dodger fan. For me, as a Giant fan, is when Marichal hits Roseboro over the head with a bat.
Uh-huh.
Well, that was inexcusable too. That was unbelievable.
They became very close friends.
Embarrassing as a fan, you want to go, oh my God.
They became very close friends.
You must have felt the same way, Ron, as a Dodger fan, and certainly as Jackie's friend, literally, not just Facebook friend. What did you think at the time?
Well, I was shocked. I really was. I thought maybe something was wrong with him. I couldn't believe that he was saying this. I really couldn't. And when he got fired, I think Jackie even mentioned that he was upset with that firing because they were good friends. He stuck up for him. He said he's not a racist, but he just.
Well, I know his wife has been quoted as saying that they were. Jackie's wife, I mean.
Yes, right. They were
the problem with that, of course, was that he was a racist. That's the only problem with saying that. Really, he was a racist. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said that.
If the words come out, they don't just, if they come out, quote,
or he was ignorant.
How did they get in the brain to begin with? You know,
that's
maybe
a real
ignorant.
mystery. That's a real mystery.
Maybe he was ignorant. Think he was drinking that night? I don't know.
Well,
drinking that night.
At least none of you use the term that disgusts me the most. Well, he's a product of his time.
Nah,
I hate to hear that about people. Hey, you're a product of your time. Don't be a product of your time. There are people that superseded that bullshit. In whatever era, there are always progressives that can look ahead and look back and see what didn't work. You learn from history.
Right.
And all that's what makes this so confusing, because he was,
I thought he was drinking.
Right there.
I thought he was possibly drinking.
Drinking has nothing to do with it. Drinking doesn't change the things you say. Drinking brings out the way you feel. Please.
That's right.
This drinking nonsense is not an excuse.
Yeah. I was shocked. I really was.
We all were. We all were shocked.
Terrible. Yeah.
Well, the whole mentality of the time was to rehire the Charlie Dressens of the world. You know, get 3 and 4 opportunities. Yeah.
The odd thing, though, is that this was on national television.
Yeah.
This is in front of the world, for crying out loud. That was the other thing that was so incredibly strange about it. You know, what was
Jimmy the Greek? Was Jimmy the Greek like?
Yeah.
Yeah, but this was far worse than Jimmy the Greek-like.
I meant the way he blurted something stupid out on television.
Yeah, but they gave him every chance in the world to get out of it, and he just wouldn't do it.
He wouldn't do it. No, he wouldn't.
No.
And the other thing about Jimmy the Greek was he was not involved in trading places, trading players. He was not involved in the nuts and bolts of somebody's team. Jimmy the Greek was some, cockeyed odds maker who was in charge of, telling you which team was going to win the next day.
Right.
So it was no import whatsoever what Jimmy the Greek thought. Who cares?
Now, doesn't that note the hypocrisy of sports, where they can hire an analyst to tell you what the numbers are and tell you who to bet on, yet when it comes back, everybody's betting. It's always the select few, for one reason or another, who are penalized, and that becomes basically subjective to who doesn't like the guy, who wants to get the publicity by prosecuting him. There's all kinds of things involved.
There's politics in everything, as you know.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
I want to cover, before we end it, one more Hall of Fame controversy and get you guys' opinion on it. And that's, I'll use Edgar Martinez, because he's all but assured of getting in next year. And he played the vast majority of his games as a designated hitter. The whole idea of you got to carry a glove to be a ball player. You could say Dick Stewart comes to mind, and what have you.
Be nice to Dick Stewart. Come on. Be nice.
Well, I mean, Dick Stewart had a horrible glove. He would have been a great DH.
That's true. No, you're absolutely right.
So would have Dale Mitchell, because Lopez stopped playing him after 1953 because he had a very weak throwing arm. There were a number of players back then who would have, done well as DHs.
And how many players like Cepeda and Tony Oliva?
Tony Oliva DH the last 5 years because of his knee problem.
Right.
Tore his knee up very badly, and that cost him the Hall of Fame.
Okay, so I'm going to ask Peter Golenbock first if you would tell me whether Edgar Martinez should be a Hall of Famer.
Immediately. Of course he should. That was his job. He did it very, very well. You know, you could argue that no pitcher should be in the Hall of Fame because he only plays every 5 days. That's crazy. Martinez did exactly what he was asked to do, and he did it damn well.
Damn well.
Belongs in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
Period.
I agree.
Good. Al
I
Blumkin.
agree.
No, I have a problem with putting DHs in, but if they put them in, I won't be upset by it.
Okay.
And I think when David Ortiz becomes eligible, that he's going to the whole attitude towards it is going to change.
Well, Ortiz was a very important player, very important person in baseball. Ortiz,
Mm-hmm.
you know, for so many reasons, including leading to the Red Sox to a whole bunch of World Series.
Right.
And
as well as the first. I mean, great.
Oh yeah.
That's the most important.
I mean, David Ortiz did something very important, which he broke the racist hatred of the Bostonian fans all by himself.
Mm-hmm. All by himself.
I mean, this was. I used to go to games at Fenway Park when I was at college, and I would sit there in the stands and watch these young hoodlums, I guess you want to call them.
I knew you were going to say that word, hoodlums. They would pick out some African American guy sitting in the stands.
They were mumsers.
Yeah, and ride them. I mean,
yeah.
and there was nothing you could do about it because they'd have beaten the crap out of you. But this is what was going on in the stadium in Fenway Park. And
that's what was going on in Philadelphia last week.
I'm sure it was.
Last year they spewed racial epithets at Adam Jones of the Orioles.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
Yes, they did. But the difference is that when they did it, there was a big stink about it, and everybody apologized, and at least they made it seem like it wasn't okay. Right. That's different. That's something that's different. But when I did my Red Sox book, not only was Joe Cronin a racist, Joe Cronin hated Italians. I mean, the strangest, not strangest, but one of the most interesting conversations I had was with their third baseman,
Frank Malzone.
Yeah. Frank Malzone, who proceeds to tell me that Joe Cronin hated Italians and kept him in the minors an extra 3-4 years.
No.
And you're going, holy smokes.
Isn't that something? Yeah.
Isn't that something? Yes.
Unbelievable.
There's a new bio out on Yorkie.
Yeah.
I told a friend of mine who's reading it, I said, I can't wade through 500 pages on him. It'd make me sick.
Yeah, well, Yorkie owned a plantation.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Very good. It was terrible.
You know what comes to mind, though? Like with every real scumbag in the world, they always seem to have a redeeming factor. I'll give you an example.
Trump has anything redeeming in Trump?
No, I said...
yes, that's correct.
The ridiculous,
nothing there.
We haven't gone to the sublime yet. We're just at the ridiculous. But let's start with somebody like O'Malley. He did something for Campy. He took care of him. He gave him a night. He raised a lot of money.
Yep.
So, and who were we talking about just a second ago? I blanked.
O'Malley.
Before that.
Trump?
No. We're talking about Joe Cronin.
Yorkie.
Joe Cronin. And Joe Cronin.
And Yorkie.
Cronin and Yorkie, who might as well have been joined at the hip.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned.
Right.
And literally, one was a son, Cronin was a son-in-law
of Clark Griffith.
Of Clark Griffith.
Of Clark Griffith.
Okay.
Yeah. Of Clark Griffith.
Who had a very tight relationship with Yorkie. Let's put it that way. My point being, Yorkie did come up with something called the Jimmy Fund.
No question.
And
that's what got him into the Hall of Fame, quite frankly.
Right. He raised a lot of money, and Ted Williams was big in that, and a lot of what, I'm not saying he wasn't all those things, all those horrible things, but he did that. That redeems a little bit, and I didn't know that was what got him into the Hall of Fame, but I can imagine what else could they pick out. This is a guy who turned down Jackie Robinson for a tryout or tried him out and let Pinky Higgins, a guy named Pinky, tell him that he couldn't do well.
They also passed on Willie Mays.
Passed on Mays, too. I don't know if they tried him out.
Yankees did that also.
Passed on Mays, too.
Yeah.
Right. And they passed on bringing up Vic Power, who, imagine the defense that he would have provided that infield. Not that Skowron, Joe Collins, those guys weren't.
That was George Weiss.
Yeah, that was Weiss.
Right.
That was Weiss.
So, but again, ahead of their times were guys like Branch Rickey and Bill Veeck.
Right.
I always think of those two, but I have a hard time thinking of other owners who were progressive along those lines. Can you guys come up with any of them?
No.
Those were the only two that I know.
It was Bill Veeck and it was Branch Rickey, and that was it.
Right, exactly.
Right.
That was it.
Right, which does this. It makes them just that much greater. Because it's like a Gretzky statistic or a Barry Bonds statistic when you compare them to the rest of, who they were playing against or what have you. And as human beings, you have to say, whoa, they were something else.
That's right. They sure were. They sure were.
Okay, guys, this has been very, very interesting. We'll try to get Mr. Campanis on. They have a book out on their lives, and I got the memo. They couldn't get a cell phone connection. So
do they have a cell phone?
That's the way it goes. First your money, then you close.
Yeah. Next Sunday is Super Sunday.
Bye, Peter.
Yeah, next Sunday we're watching the Super Bowl, gang.
Yeah.
That's
all right. We'll be back in 2 weeks.
Back in 2 weeks. Take care, everybody.
Thank you all
Bye,
three.
Peter.
Be well,
Bye,
everybody.
Okay.
We'll be back.
Good night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, Ronnie. Goodbye, Al. Goodbye, Peter. Bye.